Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Midlife Truth Project, a special 9-part series that aims to explore the myriad of shifts that women face as we settle into our 40s and 50s. Each episode in this series is going to focus on a theme or a transition. In other words, what we call a midlife truth. And today's truth is called Plan Ahead because it centers around financial security. Not only the practical aspects of what we should be thinking about, but also really the more emotional side of the equation, including how to make peace with where we are and how to talk more openly about it. And who better to unpack all this with than the one and only Jean Chatzky. Many of you are going to remember her from the Today Show, where she was their financial editor and really their go-to on all things finance. She wears a ton of hats today, including being the CEO and founder of her company called HerMoney, which is a digital media company that produces a podcast under the same name, HerMoney. And you should definitely add it to your list because it's amazing and it's really such a great way to learn about a subject that we all should be spending more time thinking about. She's also the best-selling author of like 7+ books, including my favorite, which is called Women with Money. It's a must-read. So let's do this. Let's talk truth.
Where do women in their 40s, 50s, and beyond go to find solutions when their bodies begin to change? Women-S is the leading women's wellness brand, modernizing aging through education, inspiration, and clean solutions formulated to meet the needs of our changing bodies. Their best-selling Me.No.Pause supplement takes on perimenopause and menopause's toughest symptoms. You guys know these: hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, and so much more. Just one pill a day can help with more than 6 of these symptoms. Women-S is available nationwide at Ulta Beauty, Amazon, and on womens.com. Get 20% off orders of $50 or more by heading to womens.com/midlife and using the code midlife20 at checkout. Women-S, live fully and age well.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you, Jean Chatzky, here together with us. And I have to be honest, you were truly one of the first names that sprung to mind when Dr. Taz and I started talking about this specific midlife truth around Plan Ahead. You've been just absolutely dedicated to educating and empowering women around financial literacy and financial health for almost all of your career. So I just want to applaud you for doing that. Yeah, it's been a joy to watch you. And I have to give a shout out. I know everyone else listening to this is going to remember all of the years you spent as the financial editor for NBC's Today Show. And I think if it wasn't for you, I'd be laden with credit card debt. I would probably not have put as much in my 401k. So before I kick us off with the first question, I wanted to share with listeners that one of the things that I found interesting in interviewing so many women between the ages of 45 and 57 in the original The Midlife Truth Project, I found that when it comes to financial security, it's not that different than sex. And so I'm going to explain.
Okay.
So there's a first for everything.
Jean's like, okay.
I am listening.
So I found that, when it comes to financial security, women, there's such a wide spectrum of where people land. On the one hand, you have women who wake up in their 40s and 50s and are really struggling, right? They may not be where they wanted to be, either because of accumulated bad debt or limited savings. Perhaps they've had some health issues or are divorced, widowed, but they're not where they wanted to be, right? And they're struggling. And then on the completely opposite side of the spectrum, you have women who are, dare I say, like swimming in it, right? Or seemingly swimming in it, that are not financially concerned. But in the middle, like there are so many of us that are, really, not necessarily as far as we would be, not getting enough, or maybe could be better. There's a big chunk of us that are really very much in the middle. And thinking and have retirement and planning ahead as top of mind. So that being said, regardless of where you fall on this spectrum, we all need to plan ahead. And I'm wondering, from a big picture perspective, if you could share with us, what should we be thinking about when we think about planning ahead, not only from a practical perspective, but also from a more emotional, behavioral perspective?
first of all, can I just say how much I love this? Because I think women approach these issues so differently than men do. And we don't talk about them enough with other smart women. And so I'm just thrilled to be a part of this conversation, particularly because you anchored it in this notion of planning ahead, not in should I have a Roth or a regular IRA, or how much should I put in my 401k? I mean, we can get to that if you want. But the thing about planning ahead is that it's really hard and that we're not at all wired to do it. From a young age, at a middle age, when we get to midlife, we're more worried about it, and that tends to inspire us to do a little bit more. But we know from years of study now of behavioral finance how humans are wired for the antithesis of planning ahead. We're wired to get some money and spend it. We're wired to take care of the person that we are today because we don't know the person that we're going to be tomorrow. That person is a stranger. And why should we spend the money that we could be using for ourselves or our families today taking care of this person that we don't even know? And so that makes it really, really difficult. And over the last, I would say, decade and a half, systems have developed to help us get the better of those impulses not to plan ahead. And by leaning into those systems, we have been able to do a better job for ourselves in terms of taking care of that person down the road. Because the truth is, when you look at this generation of women, and I'm right on the cusp of an Xer and a boomer. I was born in 1964, so that makes me the very, very last of the boomers and start of the Xers. And when you look at this generation of us, we are the first generation to really not have pensions, to have been solely responsible for putting money into these retirement accounts for ourselves. And once we get to the point of retirement, we're being asked to take on an entirely new challenge, which is to basically flip a switch and take all that money that we've been saving and investing and make it last for 30 years. It is really, really difficult. And so for anybody who feels like they're not where they want to be, there's a really good reason for that. You were probably not taught how exactly to do it, and you need new and different skills in order to get it right. It's not impossible, but it's certainly not your fault.
Jean, when you talk, I'm so curious, when you talk about systems that are currently in place, are you referring to the current like 401ks, the Roth that Julie mentioned, sort of these established vehicles, that force us to put some money aside? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm referring to changes that have been made in those vehicles, actually, to make it easier for people to do the right thing. So in 2006, and this might be a little too much technicality for everybody, but in 2006, we had a change in the law that basically allowed employers to automatically enroll people in the retirement plans that they were offering and then automatically bump up the contributions that they were making and automatically default their contributions into target date retirement funds. So before that, people were asked, do you want to participate in the 401k? And half of people said, no, I don't want to participate. Just give me my money. And we weren't contributing enough. And when we did put our money in many cases, it was just sitting in cash doing nothing. So all of these big brother-ish systems helped us plan ahead in a better way. And they've been really successful, not so much for older generations, but if you look at how far along the curve older millennials have come, they're doing pretty well. And one of the big reasons they're doing pretty well is because of these automatic provisions that have been entered.
Interesting. Well, let's go back to 40 to 55, right? The sort of midlife area. One of the things that strikes me is that when we talk about planning ahead and we talk about financial literacy, I feel like we can't have a conversation around that without talking about emotional literacy, because I have sat with so many women and there's some different buckets that they fall into. There's one that I actually originally fell into where there's just a lot of fear around money. Maybe money was a topic at home. There was a lot of discussion at money. There was like financial, upheaval maybe in your childhood home. So there's just fear around money. So it's almost like my husband used to make fun of me. He would be like, did you look at your P&L, and it took me a long time to get over that hump because of sort of the way I grew up. So there are those women like me, just we're scared of it. I've grown since then, but so many I sit with have not. Then there is, the woman who would like to know about her finances, but she may not be the one in control of what her finances are actually doing. So there's a little bit of a relationship pull and tug when it comes to a conversation around money. And that woman feels very sort of trapped. Like, I don't know how to bring this up. I don't know what to do. Then there's the other bucket where women do talk about it, but the answer may not be the answer that they want, or they, again, have this emotional block to planning ahead. How do we kind of resolve, what are practical ways, I guess, of trying to marry like our emotional literacy with our financial literacy and getting over things like fear, relationship blocks, or just feeling kind of disempowered when it comes to money?
I think there's 2, maybe 3 practical steps to take. The first is to understand why you are the way you are. I run a website called HerMoney. We have something called Money Type. It's a money personality quiz. It was developed by a PhD, specializes in archetypes. It's free. If you go to HerMoney and you take Money Type, you will find out that, you are a nurturer. That is why you spend all of your money on other people and don't save it for yourself or don't use it for yourself. You'll find out that you are an independent and you don't want anybody telling you what to do, and you're going to push back. There are 5 different types. People are a combo platter of a couple typically, but they make people feel seen. And knowing why you are the way you are is a big help, because until you know, you really can't fight it. You can't sort of deal with it. So I had a conversation with a woman who was very, very fearful. She had grown up in a house where money wasn't actually scarce, but the conversation around money made it seem like money was really scarce, and she wasn't able to spend money on herself, especially. And the tactical solution that she used to deal with it was to segregate some money, so to put it into a separate account that was specifically for spending on her. And once it was put aside for that purpose, she was actually able to do it. Another woman that I spoke to after going through the typing process used money to solve her problems. She had moved when she was at a formative stage in life, when she was in middle school, and she felt like she had the wrong sneakers and the wrong backpack, and buying the right things would solve her problems. And that was something that she continued as an adult. She was spending money that she couldn't afford to spend because she felt like it would solve her problems. It would make things right in her world. And understanding where that came from enabled her to pull back on that spending and to start to save first. So number one, I would say understand yourself. And if you have a spouse or a partner, get them to take the quiz too. It works for men because if you're fighting types, it's causing stress in your household that you aren't really understanding. The second thing that I would say, and Julie, I thought it was so funny that you started by talking about sex, is that just as when you're with a new partner and it's really hard to tell them what you want in bed, it is really hard to talk about money. But once you do it once or twice, once you start being vocal about what you want and you realize that the world doesn't come to an end, and in fact, you actually get more of what you want, you are more able to do it. And so talking about money is a little bit of fake it till you make it. It's a little bit of, I know this is going to be yucky and uncomfortable, and I'm going to do it anyway and get to the other side. And when you get to the other side, you realize it didn't, the world didn't come to an end. You're okay. You're still going to go out and have dinner with your spouse, and it's going to be fine. And then you can do it again.
What's a good way to start that conversation? Because I know there's so much fear around that, or there's so much like, is this going to change our dynamic?
I was going to ask the same question.
Like, how do you do that?
What's your advice there?
I think you start the conversation by saying that you want to start the conversation. I mean, at least that's how I start the conversation. And sometimes I don't like to talk to my husband about money. I do this every day, and there are things where, I don't want to look at under a microscope at my finances at this particular moment. So I don't want to have the conversation. But by announcing, hey, we're going to talk about this afternoon. Let's talk about this afternoon. Let's talk about it before dinner, or let's talk about it between episodes of Mrs. Maisel, which is what we're screening again for the umpteenth time. Let's set aside an hour and let's do it. And then make a list of the 2 or 3 points that you want to get to, so that you don't get sidetracked and you don't get off course, or you don't get so tied up in your brain that you can't remember what they were.
I think that's great advice. I just the other day was speaking with a friend of mine, and she said to me, and so let me just backtrack. I love the idea of getting the men or your partner, spouse, to take that test so you know what their relationship is with money, because that is such powerful information with a conversation partner, just to know where they're coming from. And because she said to me when we were together, she said, every time I ask my husband, to have the conversation, he gets really defensive. And I think it's because he's got some shame, like as if he's not doing enough, or hasn't planned enough, or hasn't saved enough. And so just to understand, where your partner's, feelings may be around this is very helpful. The other thing I wanted to add is, and I think I actually heard this in one of your podcast episodes, which for everyone listening, please, go listen to HerMoney. It's an amazing podcast. I personally listen to a lot of self-help and personal development podcasts, and it has been such a joy listening to HerMoney because it's very practical and I learn a lot. And so one of the things that you said in there is that, thinking about planning it ahead and retirement is kind of like, the monster under the bed analogy, in terms of, once you've looked at it, it's not so scary. So once you start having the conversation, once you know what you're talking about, once you know where you're at, it's not so scary, knowing the scope and the shape of, potentially a problem. So one question I have is going back to a little bit more of the practical side of things. I don't even know if this is a thing, but every once in a while, I think that as soon as I turned 50, AARP sent they should have sent some sort of master spreadsheet. No, I'm not talking about the envelope. I got that one.
I got
the card. I'm talking about I have this internal fear, and I think a lot of the women that I've spoken to as well, is that we're all supposed to have some sort of master spreadsheet and have it filled out about all the inventory of our finances and all the passwords, and it's all supposed to be in one place. And the rational side of me knows that AARP did not send that spreadsheet out, and I'm not delayed. But that being said, are there any sort of practical steps that we should be thinking about in terms of planning ahead? Is there a magic number we should be honing in on, or anything else?
Yes, and yes, and yes, right? There are a number of different things that you can do. There are some really helpful there's some really helpful benchmarks in terms of making sure that you have enough money to fund your retirement. The ones that I like best were developed by Fidelity Investments, and I use them all the time. And basically they say that by the time you're 30, you should have 1 times your current salary put away for retirement, at 40, 3 times, at 50, 6 times, at 60, 8 times, and by the time you retire, 10 times your current salary put away. And what you need to know about how these rules were developed is that they were developed for people who earn between $50,000 and $300,000 a year, and designed to replace, when combined with Social Security, about 80% of your pre-retirement income, and that money will last you for 30 years. So that's sort of the framework that those work in. The other important thing to know is that if you can get yourself on a path where you're regularly saving 15% of whatever you are earning, and that can include matching dollars from an employer, you should hit those benchmarks. So if you are already in your 40s and you've got a lot of ground to make up, what that says is you've got to amp up your savings if you want to hit those benchmarks, or you have to plan on working a little bit longer, or you have to plan on living a little bit less lavishly in retirement. The other big disconnect that I see among partners is that they don't really have a cohesive view of what retirement looks like. Like, your spouse may think, oh, we're going to do it at age 65. We're going to stay where we are now, and we're going to both work part-time. And you may think, we're not retiring till we're 70. We're moving to Florida, and it could be completely different. And the reason it's different is because people don't talk about it. And until you talk about it and understand the answers to important financial questions like, are we planning on staying in this house that we've already paid off? Or are we thinking we might go somewhere else? Or do we want to buy a second house? Until you know the answers to those questions, it's really, really hard to know if you're on track financially. But the benchmarks are pretty good.
Can I ask you just a question about retirement? I've struggled with this one, and I know a lot of people do too. We're talking about midlife, and technically retirement's supposed to happen, at 60, 65, somewhere around there. There are many of us, I think, and when I look at, my patient population and others, like, nobody's close to retirement at 65. They're still vital. They're still full of energy. They're still, productive. So, and then we're living longer, right? We're no longer dying at 75 and 80. We're living till 90 and 100, sometimes even longer. How do we need to rethink money and planning in the context of today? I feel like a lot of what was set up thinking about everyone retires at 65, everyone kind of dies between 75 and 80. And I feel like that's simply not true anymore. So, and not to bring politics into this, but it was a topic in the political conversations over the season, right? With, do we raise the retirement age? What do we do with all this stuff? So just curious, like, where does planning fit into that? And then I actually have one more question, because as much as we talk about women not having a voice in a relationship, they're also the women that are the primary breadwinners in a family, and they have a different burden. So I want to talk about that too.
I think it's fantastic to try to figure out when you are going to want to slow down and what that looks like for you. A good number, like 2/3 of people tell us, as your patients were saying, they're not ready to stop. They want to do something. They want to remain engaged and vital. And a good number of them want to continue earning some money. Now, that may look different than the job that they've been doing now. It may be a different kind of work that's more purposeful, that's less lucrative. It may be part-time consulting. It may, whatever it is, try to. So for me, I go back and forth with my husband on this. He's older than I am. He's already working part-time in a job that's less stressful than the job that he did for many, many years. For me, I don't see not doing what I do. I just see doing maybe a little less of it, right? So, what that looks like, and as I do projections for what my income is likely to be, that's sort of how I think about it. What does it look like if I work a third less? And what does that mean to my numbers? The problem with this is that a huge number of people don't retire by choice.
Yes, I wanted you to say this. This is perfect, Jean, because that was my question. What about the people who, oops?
Yeah, they have a health problem. Their parent has a health problem. They lose a job. They can't get another job. All of a sudden, they're done. They didn't plan on being done. And you have to prepare for that. And that's sort of where the numbers get important. I mean, being ready to step out of work, being able to support yourself by your mid-60s in case something happens, I think is very important. Even if you do it in a way that is not as again lavish as potentially you thought you might if you were working till 70, 75.
As someone who spent years working in the beauty industry, I'm completely drawn to all the innovation and science behind skincare products. And let's be honest, if it doesn't hydrate or brighten or firm the skin, then what's the point? That's why I'm totally obsessed with Womaness's Overnight Magic Cream. The only problem is that it should probably be called Everyday Magic Skin Cream because it's the first thing I put on in the morning and the last thing I put on at night. I'm serious, it's total perfection, the perfect amount of hydration for day and night. It's also never greasy or heavy on my skin, and my skin just feels firmer and definitely looks brighter. It's available nationwide at Ulta Beauty, also on Amazon and womaness.com. And guess what? You're going to get 20% off orders of $50 or more when you go to womaness.com/midlife and use the code midlife20. That's midlife20 at checkout. Womaness, live fully, age well. I was going to throw in there because I heard this, you say this too, is the scenario where there's maybe a temporary gap and you need that quote unquote, oh shit fund. And maybe you could just throw in what that is as from a planning perspective.
Yeah, it's bigger than an emergency fund. It is money that you could access in case you're unable to work for a year or two later in life. And look, I think a 6-month emergency fund at this point is a must-have for people because it is taking, the older you get, the longer it seems to take to find that next position. It's just sort of harder to land. And so you need to have a decent safety net. But then, if you're out of work for longer, where are you going to draw from? And you can look at the different you can look at the money that is in your variety of retirement accounts and see when you could access it. At that point, you have to think about making decisions about, should I tap Social Security early? Should I try to wait until I'm 70 because I know that I'm going to get a big bump in my monthly benefits? And dealing with doing those calculations with the help of a financial planner is really money well spent. Because they can look at the variety of assets that you have and the taxation on those assets and help you figure out where you can pull money from that's going to hurt you the least going into your future. As far as those primary breadwinners, we're definitely seeing many more of them than we did. Some of them, interestingly, don't take the wheel when it comes to the family finances. They feel like they're emasculating their partner, and as a result, step up and do more housework and more childcare and hand over the power. And having been through a divorce, so when I turned 40, it was the worst year ever. I lost my dad. I got fired. I turned 40, and I got divorced. I never wanted to step out of the workforce. I always wanted to continue to work and find ways to be present for my children, but also not compromise on my career. That was very important to me. I was never more glad that I had not stopped working than that year, because I needed to be able to put myself back on my feet. And I think what I've heard from women at midlife, especially those who have taken a step back from work for whatever reason, is it's really, really hard to get back in. And so, finding a way before you need to or want to keep your network fresh and to keep your feet a little bit wet is so important if you think you're going to want to work again later in life.
I think that, and again, I'm highly biased. I don't want to piss anybody off, but I've come from where my mom had to fight for self-determination and for decision-making because she didn't have financial power within the family. And my husband comes from a family where his mother went through the exact same thing. So he has been like my number one, like run, go, do, be, But I meet women all the time who don't have that. And I feel for them. But when you say have a plan, a part of that is having a plan if you're choosing to stay home and nurture the family. What is your financial plan? And I don't think women naturally think about that or naturally have an arrangement necessarily for that. And then they hit midlife and it's super scary. I mean, I've sat with women at midlife who are now depending on their 80-year-old parents for stuff because things have gone south or, all of that. And then I think for the breadwinners, you would think they've got it together, but they're doing exactly that. They're like, okay, here's the money. I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want, we're a family, and the rug gets pulled out from under them, and then they're paying alimony and child support and all this other stuff too. So I don't know. These are just observations. And again, coming at it from the health perspective, like what would you tell these women? Because then it's years of like unraveling and undoing, and, it kind of just honestly breaks my heart for them.
I think no matter where you sit, whether you are a stay-at-home parent, whether you're in the workforce, whether you're the primary breadwinner, you can't take your eyes off the ball. And if you have taken them, if you are not participating in the finances of your family, it's going to end badly. And it's going to end badly because somebody's going to die, or because there's going to be a divorce, or because neither of those things are going to happen, but somebody's going to end up in the hospital and you're going to have to deal, and you're not going to know how to do it. And so if your spouse is willing, then I think you just say, hey, my friend just lost her husband and she's completely and totally lost. And I know that you do not want that to happen to me. So can I please just do this with you? I need to do this with you for a couple of months so that I get the lay of the land, and then maybe you'll take a little break and I'll do it for a couple of months and then we can switch off. But we both need to be in the know. And if there's a financial advisor in the picture and it's a one-on-one relationship, not including you, you've got to insert yourself in that relationship. Just believe me, the financial advisor wants you in that meeting because they are scared to death that as soon as the guy dies, you are going to leave them and take the money somewhere else.
And by the way, or vice versa, is to say to your partner, like, I want to sit down with you, and I want to, if you are the breadwinner, I want to make you aware of where everything is in case my plane goes down,
Exactly.
whatever, and that goes from, our wills to, so many different things. And the other aspect, which I'm now hearing a lot of, is parents, whether you're divorced or together, is the financial situations that your children may find themselves in, which all of a sudden, play out for you, or an aging parent where you have to all of a sudden contribute to their financial situation unknowingly or unwantingly. And so there are surprises along the way. That is just a comment, but I do want to just ask one practical question, because I was happy to hear you say that, please, women listening, go to the financial planning meeting. Do not find out like a week from Tuesday that he or she had that meeting and you didn't know about it, because you need to be there. And that's a great way to insert yourself in the conversation, is by saying, I'd like to go to the next meeting, whenever that is, or I'd like to schedule a new one. How do we find, if we, a lot of spouses out there can be very kind of bravado in terms of, I don't need a financial advisor. I either work in finance or, I understand this, I've been planning, but the reality is I think so many people can benefit. How do we go about finding a financial advisor?
I think a lot of this is best done still by word of mouth. Talk to people in your circle who have similar financial situations to you. If you work for a big company and you have colleagues, ask your colleagues, because often there are advisors who are pretty expert in whatever the benefit system is of some of these big companies. If not, there are a couple of good national associations where you can get some recommendations to start building your short list. One is called NAPFA, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. These are all fee-only financial advisors. There's also the Financial Planning Association. The Garrett Planning Network is a network of planners that work by the hour. XY Planning Network is for slightly younger people in their 40s, Gen Xers. So there are a lot out there. When you've got a short list, 3 or 4 people, schedule meetings with all of them. They should either be in person or they should be on Zoom. You want to be able to look somebody in the face and ask them how they work with people, what their process is like, how they charge for their services, because there are a number of different ways that financial planners charge. Ask them what their recommendations would be for someone like you, for clients that they have similar to you. Ask them about the amount of risk that they think that you should be taking, and see if that sits with your definition of how much risk you should be taking. And then my favorite way to judge a potential financial advisor is to see who is doing the listening during the conversation and who's doing the talking during the conversation, because this actually should be a conversation about you and your goals and your dreams and what you want. And if they're spending the entire time talking about them, that is a problem. So that's a good barometer as well.
Jean, fee-based versus commission-based, right? Those are the two structures usually with financial planners.
Well, yeah. I mean, most advisors these days are fee-based. There are some that are still commission-based. I have a bias for the fee-based. Often people who charge assets under management. So if they are managing your money for you, they charge you a percentage, generally around 1% of assets under management. As the money that you have with them goes up, the percentage goes down, so that you're paying it slightly less. And there are others who charge monthly fees or fees just for developing a plan that you'll implement yourself. I like those models as well.
I mean, I know we're going left and going right, but that's kind of what I like about these conversations. Is I wonder, there's a part of me that also wants women out there to better understand how they can make peace with where they are financially. Like at some point in time, although I believe it's never too late, right? And we have a whole episode that is dedicated in this series that we're going to have with Gabby Reese on it's not too late and how to shift that mindset. Be that as it may, there comes a point in time where you need to, maybe recognize that you're not going to be on that yacht sailing around the Mediterranean in your retirement. How does one or what are your thoughts and perspective on how we can better make peace with where we are financially and what that potentially means?
I think it boils down to trying to be consistently grateful for where you are. I know things like gratitude journals sometimes sound a little bit hokey, but they work. There's a lot of research showing that they work. And if on a consistent basis, you can remind yourself of the things in your life that you are thankful for. Write down 3 things each night. You are less subject to the FOMO. You're not as likely. Look, it's very, very human to compare. Again, from the research that behavioral finance and psychological experts have done, we know that human beings adapt to what we have, which is why every time we get a raise, we have no idea how we ever lived on less. And we compare ourselves to others constantly. And if you can get yourself to stop comparing and be grateful for what you have, you're more likely to believe that what you have is enough.
I just want to, as the doctor in the house, is a part of that oh shit fund, bringing us back into kind of like brass tacks, is a part of that oh shit fund a health emergency fund as well? And if the answer is yes, is there a number that people sort of in midlife should be thinking about setting aside for health and health emergencies, especially, here in the United States, where a lot of stuff is just simply not covered anymore?
I don't know what the number in your health emergency fund would be. There are estimates of how much you would need to cover your healthcare needs in retirement. We get a new number on that every year. It's around $280,000 for a 65-year-old couple, which basically boils down to about $5,000 a year. I mean, the way that I would think about this is as long as you have health insurance, there is a number at which you don't have to come out of pocket anymore. There is a number at which if you end up in the hospital, you are going to hit your out-of-pocket cap, and then the plan is going to step in and pay the rest. I would make sure that you consistently have that much money in your emergency fund because it's going to cover you for those health emergencies. I actually thought you were going somewhere different with the question.
Where do you think I was going?
Part of what we need to aim to do with our money in order to feel that it's enough is to use it in a way that makes us happier.
Oh, yes.
And
yeah.
There are things that once you know yourself a little better, that you can sort of predict about how you use your money and what will actually give you the biggest bang for the buck. So there's a lot of research that says spend it on experiences. Experiences are better than things because when you talk about the experiences, you relive them and you get that burst of happiness all over again. I don't completely buy that. I think that there are some people who are throw pillow people. There's some people who get a sense of happiness from their home or from their gym or from their. I think you have to sort of try to tap into and those things are a bit experiential if you experience your home, if you experience your workout. But if you can get a sense of the things that really light you up and bring you joy. If you can put your money toward those things, it will feel like more than enough. The other thing that we know about money and happiness is that if you do something, even something little for other people, that brings more happiness.
I would say, the beauty, what I hear from women is that as we settle into midlife, we become, like it or leave it. It's a transitional period, and you begin to tap more into who am I today, right? And what's important to me, and what are the things that I'm going to lean into, because I'm not the same as I was when I was 20 or 30 or even in my, early 40s. And so how does one pause, take time to pause, go inward, and actually ask oneself those questions? Because I think that once you do have more clarity around who am I today, and to your point, what are my core values today? How do I align my finances, to my health, my relationships, my friendships? I mean, everything we really talk about in this series, how do we align those things around that? And I like that as a thought process, especially when it comes to money, right? Like it is, if my family is like my core value or whatever part of family, because that's a big one, how do I make sure I can prioritize some of my spend on that versus, a throw pillow?
Well, Julie, you talked about money as, Julie talked about money as sex. I would even say money is kind of like food, right? Like I feel like the more we know ourselves and we're in alignment and we're in balance kind of spiritually, then we don't eat a lot of junk food or crave sugar or eat a lot of salty chips or all those type of things, right? So I feel like, when I think about women going through, their 20s, their 30s, perimenopause, menopause, and then beyond, there's a spiritual energy to money, right? It's almost like first we want the bag and the shoes and like all the stuff and, the house. And then you kind of find us like shedding it all. Like, I really don't need that. I don't want that. This is too big. This is too much, all that other stuff. And I feel like that's an interesting journey that in a way that money is almost reflective of where we are spiritually, back to kind of like that emotional literacy, spiritual connection to money that, we started with.
Yeah, the cut, I don't know if you read it. It's part of New York Magazine.
Yes,
they did a
I
fascinating,
do. Yeah.
Yeah, so they did a fascinating little piece just this week on the amount that different aged women spend on beauty. And you could see in your 20s and 30s, the numbers it was like $9,000 a year. In your 40s, it went down, I think, to about $6,000. In your 50s, it was down to around $3,000. By the time you're in your 60s, it was around $2,000. And I think that is a reflection of women feeling more comfortable in our own skins and less that we need to buy all this stuff to hide.
How do we think about inflation in the context of planning and retirement and all these different things around money? It's sort of been a wild card for some people, I think.
Well, it's been a wild card because it's been a heavy-duty bout of inflation, but it's back under control. Hopefully it remains under control. Inflation is the reason that we have to invest our money. It's why we need to have the majority of our money in stocks, because stock market returns historically have been the way to keep up with inflation. And so when we talk about women as investors, often the rub is that women have historically not wanted to take as much risk, enough risk, have been a little late to the party, and we can't allow ourselves to do that. We need to be investing. We need to learn enough about investing to make ourselves comfortable, so that we can get those returns, because we're the ones who are going to need them. It's why I actually teach an investing class for women with my friend Karen Feinerman, who is a professional investor. She's on CNBC's Fast Money. And we started this about 2 years ago. every other Monday night, we teach women investing on Zoom. We're building a portfolio, but more than that, we're building confidence. We've got about 400 women now that are signed up.
Tell us what it's called and how to find it.
It's called Investing Fix with 2 X's because I was feeling spunky when I put a name on it.
I love it.
It's investingfix.com, or you can find it at hermoney.com. But we don't pool assets. It's really, we're building a model portfolio together. A lot of the women are buying the picks for their own accounts. We got into NVIDIA over 2 years ago, which was like, yay, go us. But it's just been really a wonderful, supportive group of women coming along
and
together.
Anyone can
and
join anytime. You don't have to have been there.
No, we can join anytime, and we have monthly webinars where we just do a refresh and tell you what's happened, and there's lots of ancillary material on the portal.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Well, I want to be sensitive to your time because we're at the top of the hour, but we do not let anybody leave without asking this final question, which is, and it doesn't have to be it can be what is your midlife truth?
My midlife truth is that at 50, I got brave. At 50, I got brave enough to say what I wanted to say when I wanted to say it without being so scared of what other people were going to think. And it's been pretty freeing.
Amazing. I love that.
Thank you, Jean
Thank
Chatzky.
you
Sure.
so much. This is incredible.
This is great. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for not retiring and wanting to continue to do this incredible work and the ripple effect that it has. This is such an important part of this series. And so, let's definitely stay in touch. More conversation to be had around this.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Okay, what'd you think?
Oh, I mean, I was always, there's a collection of midlife truths, right? And I had to really curate them down to 9. And so financial security was one of those, do I do this one or do I do that one? And I'm so happy we prioritize this conversation. To me, it feels like such an important ingredient in this 360-degree midlife story. So I'm feeling just relieved and happy that we prioritized it.
Well, I love all the practical tips that she put out, right? Like your money type, finding a financial planner. And I get to sit with a lot of people. I get a front row seat to a lot of the stuff. And so many of us don't do this. We don't have these conversations. We don't think this through. Even super successful women. This is not just about, women maybe staying at home and trying to put blinders on. This is across the board, women not feeling comfortable with money. My husband and I have often debated this. And I think part of it is because we're nurturers and we just want to care for everybody. So money feels like foreign to that conversation. So I love that we've just kind of tackled that one.
I'm going to take that test and I'm going to make Thomas take it too. So because I definitely fall in more of that kind of stereotypical situation and I need to find a bigger voice there. The other thing I liked, which is I hope that people will share, was this one nugget. I had never heard this idea that we should, this fidelity curve rather, around we should be investing this much at 40, this much. And I think either. She said 6 times your annual salary you should have amassed by the time you're 50.
50,
right? And so I don't want that to scare anybody, but I just think it's a general, it's a benchmark, right? It's something, it's like the monster under the bed. Once we've seen it, we can at least, not be so scared of it. So I thought she was great. She was great.
This was a good one. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
And I just want to say to you, I so appreciate, because you see so many women, and I can only imagine the stress and anxiety that finances can cause on their health. I just so appreciate your vantage point in this and so many other conversations, in case I didn't tell you today.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it's so true. Some of the times I've had to write those prescriptions, right, for an anti-anxiety or antidepressant are tied to finances that then impact their health. It's all connected. I've said that over and over again. So we have to think of it all when we're trying to put this plan together.
All right. See you soon, friend.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to our next midlife truth called It's Not Too Late, with former professional volleyball player, entrepreneur, author, and fellow podcast host, Gabby Reese. This is episode 8 in our 9-part series, so if you've missed any episodes along the way, we hope you'll go back and listen. See you soon.